afternoon. Thank you, Thierry, for inviting me, and thank you also for dedicating a full session to the IMEC. IMEC is the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. I am Gérard Mestrallet. I am the special envoy of the French President, Emmanuel Macron, for the IMEC. I'm not a diplomat. I have an industrial business background. I've been for more than 20 years CEO of companies like Suez, GDF Suez, NG, involved in the energy and the environment. We have a small panel, small by the size, but thanks to my colleagues, very high level. My colleagues are Anurag, Varma, and Gidon, Bromberg. Anurag is a senior vice president and head of public affairs and business development for Adani, North America, part of India's largest infrastructure and logistic conglomerate. So in this capacity, Anurag shapes the company's partnerships and strategic growth in North America. And previously, he was a vice president, head of global government and public affairs of Infosys. And he is currently based in Washington. Thank you. Gidon Bromberg is a co-founder and co-director of EcoPeace Middle East. EcoPeace is a unique regional environmental peace-building organization founded in 1994, and this organization has been nominated in 2024 for the Nobel Peace Prize. Gidon has served as its co-director for 3 decades, an attorney by profession. He has been immersed in the environmental peace-building world for over 30 years and has written extensively on the relationship between issues and water in the Middle East peace. He has presented on 3 issues, these issues before the United States Security Council, United Nations Climate Summit, US Congress, and European Parliament. So I will start first by describing what is IMEC. IMEC has been created by an agreement, an MOU, signed in September 2023 in New Delhi on the sidelines of the G20. This agreement has been signed by 8 chiefs of states or chiefs of government, Mr. Modi for India, Mohammed bin Salman for Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Zayed for the Emirates, 4 signatories in Europe, President Macron, Chancellor Scholz for Germany, Prime Minister Meloni for Italy, and Mrs. von der Leyen for the European Union, which is a member as such, and also Joe Biden. So it is an economic and logistic corridor. It aims at developing and enhancing the connectivity between the 3 continents, India, Middle East, and Europe. IMEC will be one of the major infrastructure projects of the 21st century. The total cost has been evaluated around $500 billion, but we must be prudent. What is it physically? Physically, the corridor will transport goods by containers, so this will imply ships, ports, railways. It will also transport energy, electricity, green electricity, high voltage lines, green hydrogen. And by the way, after the discussions we have just seen in the previous panel, I would like to mention that IMEC will be the most important corridor for green hydrogen because it will connect the most important consuming zone and the most important producing zone. The producers of green hydrogen will be India, and perhaps you could mention later on the immense project of India in the production of green hydrogen. So India, Saudi Arabia, notably in NEOM, the Emirates, Oman, but also Egypt along the Suez Canal, but also Jordan. So this zone will produce very important quantities of green hydrogen, and Europe has decided to import massive quantities of green hydrogen, and therefore IMEC will be the link between them. In IMEC, there will be also, it will transport digital data with fiber optics. As you see on the map, there will be 3 legs. The first leg between India and the Arabic continent, on the southeast of the Arabic continent, will be a maritime leg. And the second section between, say, Jebel Ali, for example, but it will not be the only one port in Dubai, and the exit port, Haifa, will be a terrestrial land leg going through Jordan and Israel. Jordan and Israel are not signatories states because they are not member of the G20, so they were not present in New Delhi, but they are explicitly mentioned in the decision, in the press release issued by the 8 chiefs of states. So there will be on this second leg trains, high voltage line, hydrogen pipes, and fiber optic cables. The third one is maritime from Haifa, which is so far the main exit port to the Mediterranean Sea. It will be maritime to Marseille for us, that we want to privilege as being the already today hub for digital data. It will become a hub for hydrogen with pipes going to the north and the north of Europe. But of course, there will be also other ports like Trieste in Italy. Italy is a member of the IMEC. Also Piraeus in Greece, but Greece is not a member of the IMEC. And Piraeus is owned by the Chinese. There are 3 geostrategic objectives which explains the presence of the United States. First, because the corridor stops in Europe. It does not cross over the Atlantic. Nevertheless, this project is strongly supported by the US. First, it is a way to implement the Abraham Accords in order to normalize the relationship between Israel and the Arab countries by creating a physical link. Secondly, it reinforced the links between the Occident and India. And this is very important for the US and for Europe to increase the relationship and the friendship between Europe and India. And the third objective is to create additional prosperity all along the corridor. So where are we today? First, it's important to mention that only 3 weeks after the signature in New Delhi, Hamas attacked Israel. It was the 7th of October. So, of course, for some countries, the priorities have changed in the Middle East, and that will be the case during the war in Gaza. So far, I am the only one special envoy. So it's not always easy to discuss with myself, but the people in charge of the IMEC, there are people in charge of the IMEC in all the other countries, but they are ministers, very high level, or national security advisors. And so the very important people who cannot allocate an important part of their time to IMEC. Therefore, there are lots of bilateral exchanges. For example, there is a trilateral diplomatic dialogue between India, UAE, and France, and IMEC is now at the agenda of this structure which was existing, and now IMEC is at the center. But there is so far no collective organization yet, but that's the project that we have to create a steering committee gathering all the Sherpas when they will be appointed. So we need clearly a governance body, and this governance body will gather the 8 representatives first, and then the 2 other countries that are mentioned in the agreement, plus, in our mind, Egypt and Oman. That's the first element, the first step. Secondly, there are lots of studies to be launched, studies for the identification of the infrastructures, where they are, what are the efficiency capacities, should we increase the capacities of the ports? Some terrestrial infrastructure do not exist yet in the Arabic continent, so they have to be done. What is the best track? There will be a central track, normally to Haifa, but we can imagine other alternative tracks to Jordan, to Egypt, or why not to Lebanon. So this is the second step that we want to put in place. And the third step is to prepare the day after. I explained, IMEC will create prosperity, growth around the track. We will create special economic zones, industrial zones, logistic zones, in order to have jobs, growth and prosperity, mainly in the hinterland of the ports. That will be the case in India, that will be the case in Marseille, it will be the case, it is mainly already the case in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but can be developed, and also the case in Haifa. The hinterland of Haifa will strongly benefit from the IMEC. And what is the hinterland of Haifa? It's Israel, of course. It's Jordan, south of Lebanon. It's close to the border. And also Palestine. And so we should prepare the case of IMEC being a strong element for the day after. I will stop here. And now, Anurag, you represent the private sector with the Adani Group. It is present in ports, in infrastructures, but also in energy. So what is your perspective?
Well, thank you, Your Excellency. Pleasure to be with all of you today. Let me start by introducing the Adani Group. Many of you may know we are India's largest infrastructure and logistics conglomerate. We have approximately 30 plus companies, 10 of which are publicly listed. In infrastructure alone, I will tell you, in India, we have about 18 gigawatts of thermal energy that we generate. We have approximately 12 gigawatts of renewable energy that we generate, and increasing up to 30 gigawatts by 2030. One of our great partners, Total, was just on the stage. We have 7 airports, including Mumbai Airport, which many of you have been to. We are building the 8th airport in Mumbai as well. It'll be the 2nd international airport there. We have 14 ports around India. We're developing one in Sri Lanka, and we also own the Haifa port. And we have 3 berths there, and we're expanding to 3 more berths in the coming 6 months. We have over 1 million gas customers, again in partnership with Total. We have 1,000 compressed natural gas stations. We have 23,000 circuit kilometers of transmission lines around India. We are the largest solar panel manufacturer out of India. We will be, within 2 years, we'll be vertically integrated, soup to nuts, top to bottom. We will be exporting about 10 gigawatts within about 5 years. We have 5,000 kilometers of roads. All of this is to say, when you have a global initiative starting in India, going through Haifa and beyond, we're well positioned and very excited at the opportunity to participate and hopefully in some ways lead in this initiative. Later I'll talk a little bit more about India, but I thought for this group, maybe we'd get on the same page on how we as an infrastructure, logistics, and energy company look at the investment. Really, where are the practicalities of why this makes sense? So first and foremost, as many of you know, infrastructure investment is a long-term investment. You don't do it quickly, and you don't do it for short term. You invest a lot of money in CapEx, and then you recover the CapEx, and then you make money over the decades beyond that. So that's how we initially look at a project. We look at cost effectiveness. That doesn't mean building cheaply. It means building in a cost-wise manner, such that we build without delays and disruptions. Delays and disruptions are very costly to us. So as we look at whether it be the eastern corridor, the middle corridor, or the western corridor, we look at will this be cost effective, and also is there demand? So in many cases, energy is the best investment because there's a demand all the time, everywhere for energy. Airports, not always, sometimes, right? Everyone needs energy, not everyone needs an airport, right? So these are the things we evaluate along the way. I think the most important thing is innovation. Why invest in infrastructure if what you're investing in isn't going to be better than what is already there? So we are looking at this infrastructure investment in terms of making it better, right? So it's not just supply chain resiliency and providing alternatives, right? It is, can we do it better? Do we have better security? Do we have cybersecurity? In India, for example, given all the investments I just told you about, one successful cyber attack would shut down a third of India in a minute. So cybersecurity is important. Digitization is important, right? That definitely affects operating costs, right? Then there's the intangibles, such as sustainability, right? Are we using renewable energy in the right way and in the most cost-effective way and deploying it in a manner that makes everyone better? The other thing is skills development. If you look at the entire corridor, there's a lot of opportunities to enhance the skills development in all of the affected countries. That just that actually helps our long-term durability of the project, and it benefits all the countries along the way. And then at the end of the day, there's the B2C, right? The customers, the people consuming the energy, the consuming the gas, receiving the shipments. We have to have that in mind, and many times in the current day, that also involves technology. Are the customers getting what they need in terms of next generation technology? With all that being said, I would like to just add one piece to this, which is if you go to the western tip of India, which is our flagship port at Mundra, and Your Excellency, you've been there, it's not just a port, it's a cluster of infrastructure. We have our solar panel manufacturing, our wind manufacturing there. We have our copper smelter there. We have thermal power there. We manufacture all of the pieces that go into solar panels. it's all in a special economic zone made for export. And we'll get to that in a minute, but generally speaking, the idea of having industrial parks along the way in the corridor is a great idea for a hub and spoke for all of the affected countries.
Thank you. Anurag, you described the fact that Adani will be a significant player and partner for the IMEC. You operate the major port in India. You also are the owner of the port of Haifa, so you are directly implicated in the project. But you're also an Indian group, and could you tell us what is the perspective for your country with IMEC?
Yeah, so India will really benefit from this. So Mr. Adani, our founder and chairman, when he looked to create this conglomerate, one company at a time, his idea was, how can I help the 1 billion plus people of India and think about the future of India? And that's a modernization of infrastructure and energy is where that thought process began. Fast forward many years, that's what we've been able to do in India. So the next step is India outwards. How can we promote trade and the mechanics of trade and energy and supply chain resiliency starting in India and going outwards? And when we look at that, probably the best example is, well, first of all, you should know India's largest trade partner is the EU. Second largest trade partner is the United States. So all of it points in that direction. Having said that, I think energy is the best example. So we have one of the largest renewable parks in the world. It's about 300 square kilometers of all solar and wind. And right next to it, we have 300 more square kilometers for another renewable energy park for solar and wind. So the first one feeds India. The second one will feed our green hydrogen plans. So 100 kilometers and we'll lay the transmission lines all the way to the port, and we'll have our electrolyzers at the port, and you've been to the port, and that's where we will convert the green hydrogen into ammonia and then ship out towards IMEC. And first of all, our green hydrogen is the most cost-effective in the world. We have the skills in India for the conversion to ammonia, and one of the hopeful benefits that we can provide to the region and along IMEC is distribution of green hydrogen.
Thank you very much. Gidon, with EcoPeace, your NGO, your baby, you are working with people from Jordan, Israel, and Palestine, even now, on concrete projects that could help for the day after. Could you tell us how you are succeeding in doing that, and what is the peace triangle?
Thank you very much. If we could put the slide of the peace triangle on the screen as well. It's a real honor to be here. And I think it's a real credit to the organizers for also inviting a civil society organization to speak on this stage, because we want to contribute and we want to speak about the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room in moving so many of the discussions that have been held today, and certainly in succeeding in IMEC, is seeing how we can help resolve the Israeli-Palestinian, the Israeli-Arab conflict. And IMEC can play a critical role in doing that. And we propose to do that as Israelis, Palestinians, and Jordanians, because that's what EcoPeace is. I have a Palestinian co-director in Ramallah, a Jordanian co-director in Amman, with 60 staff, 20 in Israel, 20 in Palestine, 20 in Jordan, focusing on how we can use the environment, but not only the environment, the economy and security in order to build peace. And hence the concept of the peace triangle is transformative, because it's coming and saying that Palestinians need to see how they can live with dignity in their own state. It's coming and saying that Israelis need to see how they can live in security in the Jewish state. And Jordanians need to see how they're going to live in prosperity with the rest of the region. And the peace triangle concept helps each of our people see the future. Unfortunately, our leaders at the present are not providing us with the vision of the day after that enables our peoples to see themselves living in dignity, security, and economic prosperity. IMEC, with the Peace Triangle edition, presents that opportunity, but not only in concept, but in real project. And we're proposing 3 catalytic projects. The 2 of them are not our ideas. They're part of the IMEC idea. They're part of other ideas. One, of course, as Gérard mentioned, is the railway. And the railway is already largely built from the Saudi border with the Emirates all the way to the Saudi border with Jordan. It's built there clearly. There's nothing on the Saudi-Jordan border. It's built to head to the Mediterranean. And we say extending that railway through Jordan to Haifa is brilliant, but it's not good enough. We need to see, and we propose, that Jordan be a hub. And as the enlarged map shows, a second line also going to Gaza, so that Gaza port, like Haifa port, can enjoy the type of prosperity that is envisioned for dignity for Israelis and Palestinians. And there, we welcome Adani to build the port, or the Saudis, or the Emiratis. And by doing so, the project becomes catalytic, because it doesn't just meet Palestinian dignity needs of prosperity in their own state, but it also helps meet Israel's security needs of living in its Jewish state. Because as soon as the economies of India and the Gulf and Saudi and Europe become dependent on the railway, on the corridor through Haifa, but also on the corridor through Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza, then it's no longer just an Israeli-Palestinian interest for stability and security. It's the interest of all of our neighbors, of all of our partners in this IMEC corridor. So the corridor becomes transformative when we see how Palestinians, Israelis, and Jordanians benefit. Similarly, another transformative idea, not our idea, of the Middle East, and particularly the Neom area, South Jordan, Neom of Saudi Arabia, southern Jordan deserts, and the Sinai of Egypt, producing large-scale renewables through sun, through sea, through production of green hydrogen. And a study that we were involved with Tel Aviv University shows that this area can supply 30% of the energy, of the electricity needs of the eastern side of Europe, from Greece to Germany. And therefore, it clearly meets also Europe's needs of meeting its climate, European green targets, but it also helps Europe to remove itself from a dependency on Russian gas. And in this concept, again, we see in the red lines important developments. Europe is already connecting its electricity grid from Greece to Crete to Cyprus and onto Haifa. And there are plans from Cyprus or Crete also to Egypt. And we say, great, but not good enough. We need to see the infrastructure that Adani is talking about, that Gérard is talking about, also to go through the West Bank and Gaza, to go through Palestine, again, so that we can show Palestinians how their state can live in dignity, and how the rebuilding of Gaza in the day after will not be dependent just on donor funds, but will be led by public-private partnership because of the prosperity that a railway with a port, a export and provision of cheap energy through our three countries can provide our region. And again, through that investment, and it's billions of dollars of investment that also go through Gaza, means that there's increased security for Israel. Because again, the stability of the situation in Gaza, in the Palestinian territories with Israel, becomes a corridor priority. So it's a transformative change in interest. And then finally, on water, and this is indeed EcoPeace's project of Project Prosperity, where we see an agreement signed in 2022 between Israel, Jordan, the UAE, in a water energy exchange, where Jordan's renewables powers desalination in Israel and then sells desalinated water back to Jordan. Well, in our original plan, we saw also desalination in Palestine, in Gaza. And on the day after, we can see large desalination facilities being built in Gaza that not only supply water to the Palestinian population in Gaza and the West Bank, but also sell water to Jordan, making the project a potential public-private initiative, transforming again the interests so that stability in Gaza is not only an Israeli-Palestinian issue, it becomes part of Jordan's water security. And in that way, we're really learning from the experience of Europe, of regional integration. This is the coal and steel that brought Europe together after World War II, that brought Europe to the longest period of shared prosperity. So harnessing the sun and the sea and building the IMEC corridor that invites Israel, Palestine, and Jordan together to join IMEC can be the impetus for the day after to really bring the type of economic, but not only economic, security, climate resilience, and two-state regional integration solution.
Thank you very much, Gidon. We wanted, through this panel, to present to you the point of view of the big global business with Adani, the point of view of the local civil society, with people of goodwill, people willing to restore the dignity of the local people living there in a very troubled part of the world, and the point of view of the policy makers. And so the three views gathered in order to support IMEC with three different origins. At the end, we all three are strongly supporting IMEC. Now we'll continue the question, and I come back to you, Anurag. You are based in Washington, D.C., so you work in the field of public affairs, international institutional relations, and we know that this project, IMEC, has been strongly supported by the Biden administration and Joe Biden himself. How do you see the new Trump administration as regards to IMEC?
So it's an amazing question, and what I loved is our speaker from about 2 hours ago, the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, and he kept being asked about what do you think of Trump's view on this and Trump's view on that. And he answered every question by beginning with a smile, right? And that's how we all view it in Washington. You know, what does Trump think about this? And you smile, because no one actually knows, right? What we do know is that Trump is a deal maker. He's transactional. And like many world leaders, he's about his country first, right? So the simple view is, if we just hire American construction companies, he'll be fully supportive. However, it's a little bit more complicated than that with him, right? He will be looking at the flow of American goods across the world, right? If it's good for for American exports, number one, he will be supportive. Number two is the tricky question, right? He has a view that one of the things America needs to build is a supply chain that's not reliant on China. Now, as a private company, Adani, we have no view on that. Our view is to look for opportunities to build and construct. However, Mr. Trump has made it clear that he wants to diversify the supply chain away from China-only solutions. So many times people talk about the Belt and Road Initiative and such. What we're building through IMEC is an alternative supply chain to what already exists, right? And Mr. Trump will be supportive of something like that. So whereas a number of Biden administration priorities may fall aside, I really don't think IMEC will. I think he will absolutely see that it's in his global trade, falls squarely within his global trade objectives.
We have been in Washington very recently after the elections, and we can confirm that what is in the air, in the atmosphere, as I would say, twofold. First, the idea to reinforce the links with India, diversify the supply chain. It's positive. And sometimes in the US, this project is presented as a competitor of the Belt and Road Initiative. We do not want to consider it as we are against no one. We are building something new, something positive, which will create value, create prosperity, and at the end, the market will decide. But this can be an argument for the Trump administration. The second argument is the fact that, as I mentioned, this project will create a physical link between Israel and Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Jordan, and Oman. So it is directly the implementation of the Abraham Accords, which has been signed 6 years ago. And the Abraham Accord has been signed by the Trump administration. So there has been continuity from the Trump signing the Abraham Accord and then Biden implementing them through the IMEC. And of course, this would be a positive argument. Nevertheless, no one knows. Gidon, I would like to ask you what is the political buy-in, which countries support so far the vision of IMEC as a key project for peace and for prosperity?
So together with my Palestinian and Jordanian directors, and I'll show you a photo, oh, we've lost the screen. We've traveled, we've presented the vision of the Peace Triangle addition to IMEC in the White House under the Biden administration to the cabinet of Amos Hochstein. We've presented it to the cabinet of President van der Leyen of the European Union, to the foreign minister, to other DGs in Europe, to the German government, and in the initial response, a lot of interest, but clearly saying, well, okay, but we're not there yet. We're not at the day after. And we're coming and saying, well, to get to the day after, we need to build these alliances of the private sector, of civil society, of government leadership. The German government or German government funding has recently given us a grant to do a study on the export of renewables from the Middle East to Europe. And it's actually being done by an Emirati company here, Qamar Energy, a leading energy consultant. And we're invited and sponsored to present the results of that study in February in Brussels, before the head, again, before van der Leyen's cabinet, the new foreign ministry, the new DG Med. And we're extremely excited. We're going to be working, of course, with France in, again, how to utilize the studies that are being produced. A private foundation is funding a study on the large-scale desalination in Gaza that would be part of Jordan's water security. And the Italian government is supporting a delegation from EcoPeace together with Italian civil society to think together and to write policy papers in support of IMEC and in support of the role that IMEC can lead in the agenda. And maybe most significantly, we're seeing interest of G7 countries to perhaps incorporate IMEC and its potential for peace building within next year's G7 agenda. So we actually come with real hope. In our own governments, we've heard positive responses from all three at different stages, on different aspects. Don't expect our three governments to agree outright. That's not the current trauma that our region is in. That's why we need the leadership of the 8 founding partners of IMEC to champion the incorporation of peace building into this IMEC model and bring on board together, invite Israel, Jordan, and Palestine to actually become signatories of the IMEC MOU that was signed back in September of last year.
Thank you, Gidon. We have 2 minutes left. So, as a matter of conclusion, I would first like to add an element, which is the approach of the EU. We have been discussing with Brussels, and you know that there is, perhaps that there is in the EU a process, an initiative called Global Gateway. Global Gateway aims at creating connectivity between EU as a whole and some friendly countries or friendly regions, and should concern 5 sectors: transport, digital, energy, we have the 3, at least 1, and education and health, which are not concerned by IMEC. And so there is an envelope of 300 billion euros for the Global Gateway. And the approach is to consider in the coming months the IMEC as a flagship project of the Global Gateway, and therefore to have the full support of all the European Commission and all EU. That will be in the processes of the EU, which are really complex, a way to have them on board directly and completely. Having said that, we have now to conclude. I would say that you have heard a very interesting explanation of my colleagues. I consider that in the short term, IMEC should be a concept for the day after. And in the long run, IMEC should be one of the most important infrastructure project and connectivity project for the century. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are on.
Thank you. with them.